The world was changing. A shadow fell across the land. The year was 2019. 5 years have passed since Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary Viking king, vanished. The world believed him dead, lost to the depths of history. But whispers of his name persisted. They echoed in the taverns and mead halls. They were carried on the wind across the frozen fjords. His sons, Bjorn Ironside, Ubbe Hvitserk, Ivar the Boneless, and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, had secured their father's legacy. They had each risen to become powerful leaders in their own right. Their names were whispered with a mix of fear and admiration. The sons of Ragnar Lothbrok were a force to be reckoned with, but the world craved a leader, a king to unite them. The time of peace was coming to an end. The old ways were re-emerging. The thirst for adventure, for conquest, for glory, it burned in the hearts of men once more. The call of the sea, the lure of the unknown, it whispered promises of riches and power. The world held its breath, the drums of war beat louder, the stage was set for the return of a legend. In the heart of Kattegat, the seer tossed the sacred runes. His sightless eyes saw beyond reality. He saw the threads of fate intertwining, leading to a future shrouded in mystery. His frail hand trembled with the weight of his visions. The gods spoke of hope and destruction. The seer saw Ragnar Lothbrok's return, not as a ghost, but in flesh and blood. The king would return stronger than ever. His return would not be peaceful. It would herald an era of upheaval and bloodshed. The seer saw 3 figures emerge from the mists, Ragnar's champions, destined to spread his word. They would herald a new Viking age of conquest and glory. Word spread like wildfire across the land. From the frozen wastelands of the north to the sun-drenched shores of the south, whispers traveled on the lips of travelers and merchants. Tales were spun in hushed tones, passed from ear to ear. A new power was rising, a force of nature that promised to reshape the world in its image. They called him the Allfatherson, a mysterious figure shrouded in rumor and legend. Some said he was a descendant of the gods themselves, blessed with unmatched strength and wisdom. Others claimed he was a ruthless warlord intent on forging an empire through blood and iron. The Allfatherson's origins were unknown, his true motives a mystery, but one thing was clear: he possessed an uncanny resemblance to the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. The same piercing gaze, the same untamed beard, the same aura of power and authority. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into shouts. Could it be true? Could the Allfatherson be the legendary Viking king, returned from the dead to reclaim his rightful place in the world? The day arrived like a thunderclap. The Allfatherson summoned the Viking people to a grand moot. Thousands gathered, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The Allfatherson stood atop a towering cliff face, his silhouette framed against the stormy sky. Then, with a dramatic flourish, the Allfatherson threw back his hood. There, standing before them in all his glory, was Ragnar Lothbrok. Cheers thundered across the land, shaking the very foundations of the earth. Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary Viking king, had returned from the dead. Ragnar stood before his people. He was a king reborn. His eyes burned with ambition. He had returned for a purpose. He would finish what he started. The world would know the might of the Vikings once more.
He raised his hand and silence fell. He spoke of destiny, he spoke of conquest. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed warriors, leaders, champions.
He looked out over the crowd. His eyes fell on 3 figures. Their destinies were intertwined with his own.
He called them forth. They were to be his jarls. They would lead his armies. They would spread his word. They would usher in a new Viking age. They would conquer in his name.
Their names would become legends. Son of the stars, Galactic Gaming. A cunning strategist, a master of technology and warfare. Grandpa USA, wielder of Excalibur. A warrior of unmatched strength and skill, wielding a blade of legend. And Millresh, the unliving host, a sorcerer, a necromancer commanding the very forces of life and death. Galactic Gaming, a young man of sharp intellect and unmatched ambition, stepped forward. He was not of Ragnar's blood, but he possessed a mind that could outwit the most seasoned warlord. He saw the potential in Ragnar's vision. This was a chance to reshape the world, to build something new, something extraordinary.
I had always been fascinated by technology. I spent countless hours studying ancient texts, unlocking secrets lost to time. I saw the power of technology, its potential to change the course of history. I would use this knowledge to ensure Ragnar's triumph.
He pledged his loyalty to Ragnar. He would be his strategist, his advisor, his weapon in the shadows. He would use his intellect to outmaneuver their enemies. He would bring Ragnar's vision to life. He would be known as Son of the Stars, a harbinger of innovation and change.
My methods were unconventional. I embraced technology. I used drones and advanced weaponry. I employed tactics never before seen on the battlefield. I was a force to be reckoned with, a warrior of the future, fighting for a past reborn.
Grandpa USA, a grizzled veteran of countless battles, stepped forward. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He carried himself with an air of quiet strength, the strength of 1,000 battles won. He had seen the horrors of war. He knew the cost of victory.
I had fought for kings and countries, but I had never encountered a leader like Ragnar Lothbrok. I saw in Ragnar a kindred spirit, a warrior who understood the true meaning of honor and glory. I pledged my sword to Ragnar's cause.
He wielded Excalibur, the legendary blade of King Arthur. It was said to be unbreakable, capable of cleaving through flesh and steel with equal ease. The sword pulsed with an ancient power, a power that responded to Grandpa USA's unwavering will.
I led Ragnar's armies to victory after victory. I was a whirlwind of steel and fury on the battlefield. My enemies trembled at the sight of me, their hearts filled with terror. I was Grandpa USA, wielder of Excalibur, a legend in my own time.
Millresh the sorcerer emerged from the shadows. He was a figure of mystery and dread. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light.
He spoke in riddles, his voice a raspy whisper that sent chills down the spines of all who heard it. He was a master of the dark arts. He commanded the forces of life and death itself.
He had spent years honing his craft, delving into forbidden knowledge. He sought to understand the mysteries of life and death, to unravel the secrets of the universe. He saw in Ragnar a kindred spirit, a man who challenged the very gods themselves.
He pledged his allegiance to Ragnar. He would be his weapon of last resort, the ace up his sleeve. He would use his dark powers to ensure Ragnar's victory, no matter the cost. He would be known as Millresh, the unliving host, a harbinger of death and destruction.
His power was terrifying. He could raise the dead. He could summon plagues and famines. He could bend the very fabric of reality to his will. He was a force of nature, as unpredictable as he was deadly. The world watched in horror and awe. Ragnar Lothbrok's return had unleashed chaos. His armies, led by his 3 fearsome jarls, swept across the globe. They conquered nations, they toppled empires. They spread the word of Ragnar far and wide. Galactic Gaming's cunning strategies outmaneuvered even the most experienced generals. His technological advancements gave Ragnar's forces an undeniable edge. Grandpa USA, wielding Excalibur, carved a path of destruction through enemy ranks. Millresh, the unliving host, unleashed his dark powers upon those who dared oppose Ragnar's will. The world had never seen such power. The old order crumbled before the onslaught. Fear and uncertainty gripped the hearts of men. Was this the end of times? Had Ragnar Lothbrok returned to usher in an age of darkness? Galactic Gaming watched the world burn. He had helped orchestrate this chaos. He had used his intellect to ensure Ragnar's victories. But a seed of doubt began to grow in his heart. Was this what he truly wanted? Was this the future he envisioned?
He had joined Ragnar to build a better world, but the cost of victory was high. He saw the suffering. He saw the destruction. He saw the fear in the eyes of the conquered. Was this the price of progress?
He had always believed that the ends justified the means. But now he began to question everything. Was Ragnar's vision worth the bloodshed? Was he on the right side of history? The doubts gnawed at him, threatening to consume him.
He looked at his fellow jarls. Grandpa USA, the warrior, seemed unfazed by the carnage. He reveled in the glory of battle. Millresh, the sorcerer, seemed to delight in the suffering he inflicted. Was he the only one who saw the true cost of their conquest?
Galactic Gaming's eyes filled with doubt and fear as he watched Grandpa USA and Millresh lead Ragnar's armies to yet another victory. Galactic Gaming stood alone. He surveyed the aftermath of the latest conquest. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of death hung heavy. He felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't the cold, it was the weight of victory. He closed his eyes. He could still hear the screams. He could see the terrified faces of the vanquished. He could taste the bitterness of victory. It was a hollow victory, a Pyrrhic victory.
Was this truly the only way? Was this the world Ragnar envisioned?
He had always been a pragmatist. He understood that sacrifices had to be made. But the sheer scale of the destruction was staggering. He had tried to rationalize it. He told himself it was for the greater good. He told himself that Ragnar would bring peace and prosperity to the world. But deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. Galactic Gaming was haunted by nightmares. He saw the faces of those he had killed. He heard their pleas for mercy. He felt the weight of their blood on his hands. He couldn't escape the guilt. It gnawed at him. He tried to confide in Grandpa USA. The old warrior just laughed. He said war was hell. There was no room for sentimentality. Millresh, the sorcerer, dismissed his concerns. He said death was just another tool to be wielded.
War is hell, kid. No room for sentimentality.
Death is just another tool to be wielded.
Galactic Gaming was alone. He had no one to turn to. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. He had pledged his loyalty to Ragnar, but what if Ragnar was wrong? What if he was on the wrong side?
What if Ragnar was wrong? What if I'm on the wrong side?
He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Ragnar had changed. He was no longer the man he once knew. He had become consumed by his ambition. He had become a tyrant. The breaking point came during the siege of Paris. Ragnar had ordered a merciless assault. Thousands of innocent people would die. Galactic Gaming couldn't stand by and watch. He had to act. He confronted Ragnar. He pleaded with him to show mercy, but Ragnar was unmoved. He said Paris would fall. Nothing could stop him.
Ragnar, please, show mercy.
Paris will fall. Nothing can stop me.
Galactic Gaming realized then that Ragnar was lost. There was no reasoning with him. He had to make a choice. He could stay silent. He could continue to serve Ragnar. He could share in the spoils of victory, or he could stand up for what he believed in. He could risk everything to stop Ragnar.
I can't live with myself if I don't at least try. I have to betray Ragnar. Galactic Gaming knew he couldn't face Ragnar alone. He needed allies. He reached out to Grandpa USA and Millresh. He told them of his plan. He appealed to their sense of honor. He appealed to their fear of Ragnar's growing madness.
Grandpa USA listened stoically. He had always respected strength. He saw the resolve in Galactic Gaming's eyes. He agreed to help.
Millresh was more hesitant. He cared little for morality, but he feared Ragnar's power. He agreed to join their cause.
They made a pact sealed in blood. They would overthrow Ragnar. They would end his reign of terror. They would restore peace to the world.
They knew the risks. They knew the consequences of failure. But they had made their choice. They would stand against their former king. They would fight for freedom. They would fight for the future.
Galactic Gaming challenged Ragnar to a duel. It was a desperate gamble, but it was their only chance. Ragnar was too powerful to be defeated in open combat.
Ragnar laughed, amused by the challenge. A mere strategist challenging a god, he accepted. He would crush Galactic Gaming. The news spread like wildfire. The other Vikings were stunned. What was Galactic Gaming thinking? He was no match for Ragnar.
But Galactic Gaming had a plan. He couldn't defeat Ragnar with brute strength. He had to use his cunning and exploit Ragnar's weaknesses.
The day of the duel arrived. The tension was palpable. The Vikings gathered in the great hall. Ragnar stood at one end. Galactic Gaming at the other, their eyes locked in a battle of wills. Ragnar drew his sword. The crowd gasped. It was a magnificent weapon, a symbol of his power. Galactic Gaming drew his own sword, a simple but deadly blade. The signal was given. The duel began. Ragnar attacked with ferocious speed, but Galactic Gaming was ready for him. He parried each blow, dodged each strike.
He was fighting for his life, the future, and the soul of the Viking people. The fate of the world hung in the balance.
The hall was silent, every eye on the combatants. The duel was a test of skill and willpower. The air crackled with tension. The Vikings watched with bated breath. Ragnar, fueled by fury and pride, lunged at Galactic Gaming. His blade sang through the air, a deadly arc of polished steel.
He wouldn't back down.
Their blades met with a deafening clang. The force of the impact reverberated through the great hall. Ragnar, used to crushing his opponents with sheer strength, found himself momentarily surprised. Galactic Gaming had anticipated his attack, using Ragnar's momentum against him.
The Vikings roared their approval. Sparks flew from their blades like fireflies dancing in the twilight.
Grandpa USA watched from the sidelines, his face impassive. He had fought alongside Ragnar for years and knew the king's strengths and weaknesses. He had seen that look in Ragnar's eyes before, the look of a predator who had underestimated his prey. The duel raged on. Ragnar, his initial surprise fading, fought with the fury of a cornered wolf. He unleashed a flurry of blows, each one aimed at ending the fight quickly.
But Galactic Gaming was ready. He moved with speed and agility, having studied Ragnar's fighting style. He knew the king relied on brute force and aggression. Galactic Gaming wouldn't make that mistake. He would use Ragnar's strength against him, turning defense into offense.
Their swords danced a deadly ballet. The Vikings watched in awe as Galactic Gaming countered each of Ragnar's attacks. It was a duel of skill versus might, and for the first time, might wasn't winning.
Millresh observed from the shadows, still harboring doubts about Galactic Gaming's ability to defeat Ragnar.
Ragnar roared in frustration. He had never faced an opponent like Galactic Gaming. He was used to his enemies breaking before him, but Galactic Gaming wouldn't break.
He pressed his attack, desperate to end the fight. He had to prove his dominance. He was Ragnar Lothbrok, the king who had returned from the dead.
Galactic Gaming felt his strength waning. He knew he couldn't win in a battle of strength.
He had one chance. As Ragnar lunged forward, Galactic Gaming stepped aside. He let Ragnar's momentum carry him past. It was a risky maneuver, but it was his only hope.
Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The Vikings held their breath, their eyes glued to the two figures locked in mortal combat.
Ragnar, his attack spent, stumbled past Galactic Gaming. He turned, eyes blazing with fury, ready to renew his assault.
But Galactic Gaming was ready. He had anticipated this moment. He lunged forward, his blade a silver blur in the flickering torchlight. He aimed for the one spot Ragnar had left unprotected.
The crowd gasped. They had witnessed Ragnar's fury, his relentless assault. Now they saw the consequence of his rage.
Ragnar saw it too. The flash of steel, the look of grim determination in Galactic Gaming's eyes. He knew in that instant that he had made a mistake. He had underestimated his opponent, and now he would pay the price. Galactic Gaming's blade found its mark. It plunged deep into Ragnar's side, cleaving through flesh and bone. Ragnar roared in pain, a sound that echoed through the great hall.
His eyes met Galactic Gaming's. The fury was gone, replaced by a look of surprise, of disbelief. He had returned from the dead, conquered nations, only to be defeated by a strategist in a duel of honor.
Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary Viking king, collapsed to his knees. His blood stained the ground crimson. The Vikings watched in stunned silence as the life drained from their king's eyes.
Galactic Gaming stood over his fallen king, his blade still dripping blood. He felt no joy in victory, only a profound sadness. He had respected Ragnar, admired him, but also feared what he had become.
The silence in the great hall was deafening. The Vikings looked at each other, their faces etched with shock and uncertainty. Their king was dead.
Galactic Gaming lowered his blade. He knew that the Vikings would look to him for leadership. He had defeated Ragnar in fair combat. He had proven his strength, his cunning. But he didn't want to rule through fear and conquest.
He looked at the assembled Vikings, his gaze sweeping over their faces.
Ragnar Lothbrok is dead, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. But his dream does not have to die with him. We can still build a better world. But we must do it together, not through conquest and bloodshed, but through cooperation and understanding.
His words were met with a mixture of skepticism and cautious hope. The Vikings were a proud and warlike people. They were used to taking what they wanted, to bending the world to their will.
Galactic Gaming knew it would be a long and difficult journey, but he was determined to try.
The weight of the world pressed down on Galactic Gaming's shoulders. Ragnar was dead by his hand.
I had hoped that Ragnar's death would unite the Vikings. I had hoped that they would embrace my vision of a better future, but I had been naive.
Ragnar's death had shattered the fragile unity of the Vikings. Some saw Galactic Gaming as a hero, a liberator. Others saw him as a traitor, a usurper. The Viking world was on the brink of civil war.
I have to find a way to unite the Vikings, to remind them of their shared heritage, their common goals.
But one obstacle remained, Millresh, the unliving host. He had retreated to the frozen wastelands of the north, his powers amplified by the icy grip of winter. He commanded legions of the dead, their skeletal hands clutching rusted blades, their empty eyes burning with an unholy light.
I am the unliving host, the unyielding force of the north.
Galactic Gaming knew that he couldn't defeat Millresh through conventional means. The sorcerer's powers were too great. He needed to find a way to outsmart him, to turn Millresh's own magic against him.
I have to find a way.
He spent weeks poring over ancient texts, searching for any scrap of knowledge that could help him defeat Millresh. He knew that time was running out. Millresh was gathering his strength, preparing to unleash his full fury upon the world. Galactic Gaming decided to gamble. He would confront Millresh directly. He knew it was a suicide mission, but he had to try. He had to make Millresh see reason.
I have to try.
He set out alone, his only companions the howling wind and the crunch of snow beneath his boots. He journeyed for weeks, his resolve hardening with each passing day. He had faced death before. He would face it again.
I've faced death before. I'll face it again.
Finally, he reached Millresh's stronghold, a fortress of ice and bone built on the slopes of a dormant volcano. The air crackled with dark energy. The stench of death hung heavy in the air.
This is it, the heart of darkness.
He drew his sword, its blade glinting in the pale light.
Millresh, I challenge you to single combat. Let us settle this like Vikings.
The silence stretched on, then a cold, mirthless laugh echoed from the depths of the fortress.
You think you can defeat me, little strategist? You are but a flickering candle compared to the inferno of my power.
Millresh emerged from the fortress, his skeletal form draped in dark robes, his eyes burning with an unholy light. He raised his hand, and the ground trembled beneath Galactic Gaming's feet. Skeletal warriors, their bones held together by dark magic, rose from the snow, their empty sockets fixed on Galactic Gaming.
You are outnumbered, outmatched, and out of your depth. Surrender now, and I will grant you a swift death.
A flicker of something crossed Millresh's face. Doubt, regret. It vanished as quickly as it had appeared.
You are a fool. There is no victory without sacrifice.
He raised his hand and the skeletal warriors surged forward. Galactic Gaming fought with the fury of a cornered animal, his sword a whirlwind of steel. He cut down skeletal warrior after skeletal warrior, but more rose to take their place. He was tiring.
I have to end this quickly. I have to get to Millresh.
He charged through the ranks of the undead, his eyes fixed on the sorcerer. He felt a searing pain in his side as a skeletal hand raked across his ribs, but he kept going. He reached Millresh, his sword raised for a killing blow. Galactic Gaming stumbled back, his breath ragged, his vision blurring. He had failed. He had underestimated Millresh's power. He had doomed them all. He closed his eyes, waiting for the final blow. But the blow never came. He opened his eyes to see Millresh staring at him, a strange expression on his face. The sorcerer's hand was outstretched, his bony fingers inches from Galactic Gaming's chest. But instead of striking, Millresh lowered his hand.
You are right. I had forgotten.
He turned away, his skeletal shoulders slumping.
Leave this place and never return.
Galactic Gaming watched as Millresh retreated into the fortress, his army of the dead melting away like snow in the spring sunshine. He had won, but at what cost? What had become of the sorcerer? What darkness still lingered within him? He didn't know the answers. All he knew was that the world was a more dangerous place without Ragnar Lothbrok to hold back the forces of chaos. He sheathed his sword, his hand trembling. He had a long journey ahead of him. He had to unite the Vikings to rebuild what had been broken. News of the fallen Jarls reached every corner of the world. Whispers turned to stunned silence. The world Ragnar Lothbrok sought to conquer now grappled with the vacuum his absence created. His name, once uttered with a mix of fear and reverence, now echoed with uncertainty. What would become of their world?
Grandpa USA, his spirit broken, wandered the earth seeking atonement. He had been a warrior, a tool of Ragnar's ambition. Now he sought to lay down his sword, to find peace in a world ravaged by the very chaos he had helped create.
Millresh, the unliving host, retreated further into the icy depths. His victory over Galactic Gaming had come at a cost. He had glimpsed the abyss within himself, the insatiable hunger for power that threatened to consume him. Now he sought solace in isolation, a king in a kingdom of bones.
The world waited with bated breath. Who would fill the void left by Ragnar Lothbrok? Would it be Galactic Gaming, the strategist who dared to defy a king? Or would chaos reign, plunging the world into an age of darkness and despair? Galactic Gaming knew his journey was far from over. He had vanquished two of Ragnar's Jarls, but the true battle awaited him, a confrontation with the ghost of Ragnar Lothbrok himself. The echoes of Ragnar's ambition, his dreams of conquest, still resonated within him.
He sailed to Kattegat, the heart of Ragnar's former empire. The Vikings there were a fractured people, caught between the allure of their old ways and the promise of a new future. They looked to Galactic Gaming with a mix of hope and apprehension. Could he truly lead them out of the darkness?
Standing before the assembled Vikings, Galactic Gaming felt the weight of their expectations. He knew he couldn't become Ragnar, nor did he want to. He had to forge his own path, to lead them not with promises of conquest, but with a vision of a world where Vikings could thrive without bloodshed.
But deep within Galactic Gaming, a storm raged. Ragnar's voice, filled with pride and scorn, whispered doubts in his ear. "You cannot escape your destiny," it hissed. "You were meant to rule, to conquer, to become a god among men."
The battle raged within Galactic Gaming's soul. He saw the world Ragnar envisioned, a world of Viking dominance, of power and glory, yet he saw the cost, the blood-soaked fields, the shattered lives. The phantom pain of his final duel with Ragnar was a constant reminder.
He looked out at the faces of the Vikings. He saw their strength, their resilience, but also their pain.
With resolve, Galactic Gaming silenced the ghost of Ragnar Lothbrok. "We will not be defined by the violence of our past," he declared. "We will build a future of peace, prosperity, and freedom." The Vikings roared their approval. They would embrace the future, not as conquerors, but as builders. Years passed, the world began to heal. The scars of Ragnar Lothbrok's ambition slowly faded. The Vikings, under Galactic Gaming's guidance, turned their backs on conquest. They embraced exploration, trade, and diplomacy.
They established settlements in far-off lands, sharing their culture and knowledge with the world. They became bridge builders, connecting east and west, fostering understanding and cooperation. The world marveled at their transformation. The Vikings, once feared as harbingers of chaos, were now respected as partners, as innovators, as citizens of the world.
Galactic Gaming, his left arm a constant reminder of the cost of freedom, watched as the world embraced a new dawn. He had stayed true to his promise. He had led the Vikings out of the darkness, into a future where violence was not the answer, where peace was not a dream, but a reality. The legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok lived on, not in the clash of steel or the roar of battle, but in the quiet strength of a people who had chosen a different path, a path of peace, of progress, of hope, a path that led to a brighter future for